Hello and welcome. You're watching Graced Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh. And on the show today, the presidential slush fund has sparked a storm in the United States of America. The fund was set up to compensate people who claimed that they were unfairly targeted by the past justice departments. But what really are the implications of a slush fund such as this for American politics? And in Turkey, an Ankara court has annulled the 2023 party Congress that had elected Özel as the chairman, further weakening the opposition. But let's, of course, start with what is happening in the United States of America, where the US Congress has witnessed two abrupt cancellations. One vote in the House of Representatives and another vote on a bill in the Senate. And both have been stalled by Republican lawmakers. The first stall happened in the US Senate after the Republican lawmakers left Washington for their Memorial Day recess without passing President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement package. The bill was worth nearly $90 billion. It was meant to fund ICE and border patrol agencies. Now, Trump has demanded that it reach his desk by the 1st of June, and that deadline is now going to be missed. The reason for this sudden turnaround is a controversial $1.8 billion fund that critics are calling the Presidential Slush Fund. Now, the slush fund was set up to compensate people who claimed that they were targeted by the past justice departments, and the backlash has been swift, and it has come from within Trump's own party. The GOP senators say that they were blindsided by the Justice Department's announcement, and the issue has become so toxic that there were doubts that the Republicans could muster even the 50 votes that are needed to pass the broader immigration bill. The acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was grilled by the senators. The Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen called it an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund. When asked whether individuals who assaulted Capitol Police officers would be eligible, Blanche said that anybody in this country will be eligible to apply. And that answer alarmed many Republicans, and the former GOP Senate leader Mitch McConnell called the settlement to be utterly stupid and morally wrong. The other vote, which has now been delayed, was on a bipartisan resolution that is aimed at limiting President Donald Trump's authority to continue military action against Iran without congressional approval. The U.S. House Republican leaders abruptly cancelled the vote that was scheduled to be held on Thursday afternoon, just hours before the lawmakers left Washington for their Memorial Day recess. The resolution that was introduced by the Democrat Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York sought to require Donald Trump to obtain authorization from the Congress before continuing with their military operations against Iran. The House had rejected 3 previous war powers resolutions earlier this year. But support for the latest measure had been growing as concerns had mounted over the expanding war in West Asia. Meeks has now accused the Republican leaders of delaying the vote for political reasons and has said that this measure is now expected to return to the House floor in early June after the lawmakers come back from the recess. The Democrats have argued that the Constitution gives the Congress and not the President the authority to declare war. They warned that the United States could be drawn into a prolonged war without a clearly defined strategy. Now, the White House and most Republicans insist Trump acted within his constitutional right as the commander-in-chief, saying that the military operations were limited and necessary to prevent imminent threats tied to Tehran's nuclear capabilities. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Ms. Jennifer Ewing, who's a spokesperson for the Republicans overseas and is joining us from London. Now, Ms. Ewing, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, it's very interesting the way some of these things actually happen in American politics. This fund that's being called the slush fund. Do you think the Republicans will be able to explain to the people of America as to why a fund such as this is even necessary?
I think that one thing we know is that as this is getting out into the news more, it does need a stronger explanation. I think even Republicans will agree that the president has not explained it clearly what exactly is going on. A lot of people will remember in the lead up to the 2024 election that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, was weaponized against then candidate President Donald Trump. You know, we saw 93 indictments. We saw a lot of lawfare, as we like to call it, that we hadn't seen in the past, used against a political opponent. On top of that, we had more and more information coming out about the infamous January 6th. You know, there are people now who are saying whether it's the person who was in charge of the pipe bomb or whether there were actual federal agents involved in January 6th. So a lot of people think that many of the people, not all of them, because there are people who did injure officers and should be obviously, you know, prosecuted and put in jail. But there are a lot of people who were put in jail who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think if explained properly, Americans will understand that.
You know, the Americans, but it appears that the president is having trouble convincing even his own Republican Party members to sign up for something like this that's being called the slush fund. Now, the other aspect that I want you to weigh in on, Ms. Ewing, is about the War Powers Act of the president. The Democrats want the Congress to authorize the right of the American president to actually wage war on another nation. The Republicans, some of them close to Trump, say that this is well within Donald Trump's rights because the Americans are not calling the Iran war. This is still Operation Epic Fury. And because it is just an operation and therefore it is not a war and therefore it does not require ratification from the Congress, how do you see this controversy playing out? Does the president have the right to wage war, or can he just wage war and call it's a special operation?
Okay, so great question. And there's a couple of things to be aware of. First of all, the president does have about 60 days in order to do something without Congress. That's number one. But we're beyond those 60 days. Number two, he's not the first president to wage war without Congress. So a lot of people on both political parties have done this before without Congress. And many people think that this is actually, it's unconstitutional, what's this War Powers Act. Having said that, where it gets even more complicated is a lot of people, both Republicans and Democrats, do not actually want to take a vote on this because many people can see that the war, I mean, it is a war, let's be honest, regardless of what they call it, is not going well. And so just like with Iraq, you know, over 20 years ago, where people have now tried to separate themselves from having voted for it, the same thing's going to happen with this Iran war. So a lot of these Congress people don't want to be on the record one way or the other because they have no idea how this is going to turn around. I personally think it's gone on, you know, this was not a quick weekend and done like Venezuela, which was basically an internal palace coup, not actually a war. So I think absolutely Congress should vote on this. Yes.
I think you've been very candid in saying what you've said. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Ewing, for joining us from London and getting us that perspective there. All right, let's now shift our attention to the other big story that we are tracking on race to power. Now, President Trump's billions, and he loves billions, he just says it over and over again, billions and billions keep growing. But the controversy surrounding it is also going up. Donald Trump at this moment is worth about $6.5 billion. That's the latest figure from Forbes. And this is raising a lot of eyebrows within the United States. Now, over the past year, Donald Trump's net worth has surged to about $6.5 billion, nearly tripling his wealth in the last 18 months that he's been president. Now, before returning to the White House, Trump's net worth stood at about $2.3 billion. The biggest driver has been cryptocurrency. Now, Trump's crypto ventures had stalled before the elections, and after his victory, they took off. They've added an estimated $1.8 billion to his wealth. The courts also delivered good news for Trump. His legal team got $500 million judgment against him thrown out, and that had saved him about some $500 million in one stroke. And then there is his licensing business. It was largely inactive for many years, but not anymore, as foreign developers are rushing to try and put that Trump name on their projects. And that surge has added another $400 million to his net worth. However, Trump Social is the reason why his net worth could have been even more. Now, Trump's shares in Trump Media and Technology Group have lost $1.3 billion in the course of the last 12 months. The platform continues to lose money, and that single drag has kept his gains in check. And still, step back and the picture is even more remarkable. Critics say that it is not a coincidence. They allege that the president is actually using his office to make more and more money. They say that cryptocurrency deals, foreign licensing agreements and courtroom victories tied to his presidency all point to one thing, and that is profit from power. Now, Trump and his allies reject this. They say that his success reflects the world's confidence in American leadership. But with most of his second term still ahead, one thing appears certain, and that the numbers are not done climbing. The locals in Greenland are out on the streets to lodge their protest against the American President Donald Trump, and these demonstrations erupted after a visit by the Louisiana governor, Jeff Landry, to the island. The demonstrators have accused the U.S. delegation of being disrespectful and politically insensitive as tensions continue to rise over Washington's strategic ambitions in the region. Anger spilled onto the streets of Nuuk as protesters gathered outside of the newly opened U.S. consulate event during the visit of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry. The demonstrators, in fact, shouted anti-American slogans and accused Washington of trying to expand its influence in Greenland under the guise of partnership and security cooperation. The protests intensified as reports emerged that members of the American delegation handed out red Make America Great Again caps and chocolate chip cookies to locals during the informal outreach efforts. The U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland, Jeff Landry, argued that Greenland needed stronger American involvement, particularly in security and infrastructure.
I think it's time for the U.S. to put its footprint back on Greenland. I think that you're seeing the president talk about increasing national security operations and repopulating certain bases in Greenland.
And the visit has in fact become even more controversial after it was revealed that Landry's delegation reportedly included a doctor assigned to study Greenland's healthcare situation. The critics have called this move patronizing, saying that it reinforced perceptions that the US sees Greenland as a strategic project rather than as an equal partner.
Over the heads on the Greenlanders, I think it's very colonialist rhetoric about buying this place and putting up hotels, which Trump has shared memes about. I think there has been talk over people's heads, and it's just a really unpleasant reminder of people as commodities or as a product, as something that can be bought and sold. It's very unpleasant to witness, and I think this ruthless rhetoric.
Now, the remarks have once again highlighted America's growing focus on Greenland's strategic importance. The United States has massive interest in the Greenland as the Arctic island sits between North America and Europe and plays a critical role in missile defense, military surveillance and Arctic logistics. As climate change melts Arctic ice, new shipping routes are opening up, making the region increasingly valuable both commercially and militarily. Greenland is also home to vast reserves of rare earth minerals, resources considered essential for advanced technology. Now, clean energy systems and defense manufacturing. The US already operates the Pituffik space base in Greenland, its last remaining military installation on the island. But during the Cold War, Washington had maintained nearly about 17 facilities there. And now with geopolitical competition intensifying in the Arctic, Greenland is back in the focus again, becoming a major strategic flashpoint. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, the issue of Greenland doesn't seem to go away under Trump's presidency. Tell us what this entire controversy is about.
Yeah, Greenland's strategic importance just continues to grow as opposed to going away, as you mentioned, Mohammed, not only because of those Arctic shipping routes, but also natural resources, as well as its military significance as well. It's just militarily, it's positioned in a way that the United States can benefit greatly, notably when it comes to competition with Russia and China. And so it makes it this island basically increasingly sensitive in global politics, but it also really puts a burden on the people of Greenland who, as you just reported, just really don't want to have anything to do with the United States in terms of the country taking it over in one way or the other. And it doesn't seem like they have an appetite for a more U.S. presence there. This demonstration happened because the U.S. just expanded its consular and mission perimeters and its premise. So let alone, to have more military presence in there and whatnot, it seems that they're just not, into that. But it was interesting, I think, a few months back, Denmark said that it was open to talking to the United States when it comes to more U.S. involvement in Greenland. Perhaps they could sort of find some kind of bilateral agreement that would benefit the both sides that won't result in, an all-out crisis.
Indeed, Denmark has said that it is willing to do a deal, but Trump wants to outright take over the island of Greenland. That, of course, has been the crux of the problem. Thank you very much indeed, Susan, for joining us with that perspective. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Turkey. There's never a dull day in politics in Turkey as well. A court in Ankara has dealt a major legal blow to Turkey's opposition party, the CHP. The decision effectively ousts Özgür Özel from power, the opposition party's chairman. The court order has annulled the 2023 party congress that elected Özgür as the chairman, and instead has said that the former CHP leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, should replace the ousted leader. CHP has now moved Turkey's Supreme Court of Appeals in a bid to overturn the ruling. The decision has, of course, triggered massive uproar, with a defiant Özel telling supporters that he will not surrender. Now, the opposition leader was seen addressing a rally shortly after the court's decision was announced.
If necessary, we will bring life to a standstill. If necessary, we will use our power that comes from consumption, but we will not surrender. I am not responsible for anything that happens here later, anything that happens later. The responsibility lies with these coup plotters.
Now, Istanbul's jailed mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, has called the court verdict a coup against Turkey and democracy. In a post on X, İmamoğlu has accused the Erdogan government of using courts to stage a judicial coup against the CHP. The court ruling is the latest in a string of developments which target the Republican People's Party. Back in 2024, the party had won a huge victory in local elections over President Erdogan's ruling AKP. Özel has in fact been the face of Turkey's biggest street protest in over a decade that were triggered by the arrest of İmamoğlu, who's still in jail and is battling an array of legal cases alleging everything from corruption to espionage and terror ties. The thousands in Cuba descended outside the U.S. Embassy in Havana to rally in support of former President Raul Castro, who the U.S. has now indicted. The country's top leadership has also participated in the demonstrations. Take a look at this report. A grieving mother who became the face of public anger after Greece's deadly train disaster is now stepping into politics. The Maria Kariastianou, who lost her daughter in the country's worst rail tragedy. has launched a new political movement promising accountability, transparency and democratic reform. Now, Castro is a pediatrician whose daughter was killed in Greece's devastating train crash in 2023. And 3 years later, she's in fact now taking her fight from the streets to the political stage. Now, the rail disaster, which shocked Greece and then triggered nationwide protests, have left dozens dead and has sparked widespread accusation of negligence and systemic failure. Families of victims have repeatedly accused the authorities of attempting to shield those responsible. But the Greek government has strongly denied these allegations.
It was a terrible situation. Everyone could imagine themselves in our position. I realized there was no room to remain uninvolved or indifferent anymore.
Now, Castro quickly emerged as one of the strongest voices demanding justice and accountability after the tragedy. And now, she says, the experience has completely changed her outlook on public life and has forced her to become politically active.
I never thought I would get involved in politics. But after everything that happened, I regretted not reacting sooner to what was happening around me.
Now, Castro officially launched her new political movement called Hope for Democracy during a packed event. The launch has come at a time when Greece's opposition remains fragmented and public frustration over corruption and governance continues to grow. As demands for accountability continue to intensify, her campaign is already becoming one of the most closely watched developments in Greek politics. And without it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. This is Mohammed Saleh signing off. Thanks for watching.
Deep cave diving expedition turns tragic. How did the 5 Italian divers lose their lives inside the Maldives underwater caves? Measles death toll crosses 450. Why is Bangladesh unable to tackle the disease's outbreak? And we take you to Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where the members of the remote tribal communities are increasingly joining the police as home guards. All this and much more with me, Kripa, on Inside South Asia.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. This is Fine Print. I'm Kripa. We'll start with a quick look at the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin says that 6 people killed, 39 injured, accuses Ukraine of carrying out terror attack in Luhansk, warns strong retaliation. Pakistan military chief Asim Munir departs for an official visit to Tehran.